But we put it there because the space baby put it there.
That's a stable time loop. That's what we call a stable time loop.
We create ourselves, Paul. We create ourselves in an endless cycle for all time. That's the only purpose to mankind.
oh dear Lord.
Well, that's debatable.
Welcome to the Skiffy and Fantasy Show's Mining the Genre Asteroid, a brand new live show reanimation of Paul's... Wait, is this about your soul, Paul?
Yes, it is.
Did you reanimate your soul again?
Wow. Yeah. It was getting a little dusty.
Oh, got it. Oh, no, what's actually written here is long-running feature for our blog, a feature where older, overlooked genre gems are dug up and discussed anew. Interesting, Paul.
What we're talking about today, we're talking about a book called The Demon Breed. Come from the action adventure on an ocean planet, stay for the intelligent otters. But it doesn't take place in Nepal or Tibet.
Are you sure?
Positive. You're up, Sean.
Oh, is that me in the script again? Okay.
Yes.
Yep.
Sorry.
Where it says I'm Sean, that's you, Sean.
Yeah,
Well,
I'm not going to say it.
It might have screwed up again while I was talking it, so I thought I would fix it. Anyway, hi, I'm Sean.
I'm the ineligible Paul.
I'm Patricia, the poet.
And didn't we technically already say what we're doing, Paul?
Yes, we did.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, so do I not actually do that?
No,
part
say it again.
I'll do it again. I'll do this. Okay, got it. I'll do
For
the
those
script
coming
again
in late.
because we're professionals. So on today's show, we'll discuss 19...
Priorly nominated and eligible this year.
Let's be real. This is becoming the Paul Weimer experience very soon. On today's show, we'll discuss, again, the 1968 novel, or I should say, story eventually serialized and then eventually turned into a novel, The Demon Breed by James H. Schmitz. So you can go read it now if you'd like to pause, if you're listening at home. And if not, you're getting spoiled today. Too bad.
Wait, actually, Sean, wait. Mining the Genre Asteroid, we're going to talk about the book in general terms so people can figure out how much it might interest them if they haven't ever read it, and they probably haven't. But then we're going to put up a spoiler wall, big wall, before we talk about specific details of developments or surprises that would be spoilery. So you can always come back later after you've read the book and join us for that part of the conversation.
And, as always, please share your comments with us about this and past episodes at skiffyandfanty.com/listener suggestions. Some of these questions or comments might get discussed right here on future shows. If you aren't already, join us on Sean's Alphabet Streams Twitch channel to be a part of our interactive live streaming format. Ask your questions right then and there. Finally, be sure to join our Patreon. It only takes $1 a month. And join us for our special speculative dispatch streams, a chance to get Skiffy and Fanty points for cool prizes, and other perks.
I like how you made that sound really fun. Thank you, Trish.
Yeah. Trish is fun.
Okay. Whoever wrote the script, I did not write this, so whoever wrote the script is making a few references, because the next bit in our script says, okay, I'm going to have un chiquito palito give a quick summary of Demon Breed. So Paul.
I didn't write this, but I'm going to have to deal with this. Fine. Okay, The Demon Breed, set in James Schmitz's Federation of the Hub verse, moves away from the telepathy and psi powers of Tells Embern, in which, if you've read any James A. Smith, you probably know those books the most. Instead shows us what one ordinary trained human can do facing an entire alien invasion of her planet. Dr. Niles Eklund would rather study the biology of a truly fascinating ocean-dominated world that she loves. But the aliens put the stop to that with their invasion scheme. So, a woman's got to do what a woman's got to do. And so the novel is Eklund to pose and bedevil the alien invaders with the help of an old man looking for the secret of longevity and some intelligent otters. And some more mox and panache than an entire suite of heroes. Action and adventure as Eklund slows and opposes the enemy long enough till a planetary response can handle the secret invasion. Sound good?
Sounds fine. So we should give some background about this book, because I'm going to go out on a limb. A lot of people have never heard of it before. Most people probably have never heard of Schmitz either. James A. Schmitz. And I'm sure maybe Paul or Trish will talk a little bit about the author maybe afterwards. But a couple things we should note is this book was originally released serialized in analog under a different, in a shorter form known as the Tavella, which is part of the novel. I'm sure we'll come back to it. It was published in paperback a little bit later, and then obviously had reissues as part of like the Sci-Fi Book Club. And then there was apparently a bunch of translations of it, so it was reasonably popular in its era, and then kind of disappeared for a while, and Baen has now released an omnibus of like all of the hub, quote unquote, dangerous territory novels. It is, I do find the Wikipedia note that it might be the first feminist science fiction book rather amusing, because it probably is not.
No.
I can say no.
no,
I don't
no.
know who made that up and who wrote that on the wiki, but I am deeply amused by that. This book is popular enough to have a wiki, which is saying something, but it is one of those wiki pages where it's basically 4 paragraphs of mostly general publication knowledge, a completely unfounded paragraph about it being the earliest instance of feminist SF, and then a quote from Amazing Stories from 1969 when James Bush talked about how much he liked it. And that's kind of it. It's a little bare, to say the least. But it does do the thing I love, which is really bananas, silly-dilly covers that look almost like art, kinda, but yet when you look close, you go, but is it? Is it? Yours is even more ridiculous than mine. It gives us a very different impression.
Oh crap, I don't have my copy handy.
So Trish's version, for anyone who's watching at home, because it will be on YouTube later, if you looked at mine, you would go, okay, maybe 1960s sci-fi, right? There's probably some weird stuff in there. You look at Trish's and you go, oh, so it's Conan the Barbarian, right? Like there's like weird monkey people and like she's wearing almost no clothing, and that's the way it is. Of course, there's a reason why she's in that clothing, because in the book, she goes diving and stuff. Like, so she's got appropriate gear for the divings. Also, I guess she looks like a Bond girl at the same time, as you do. So in any case, I guess the thing I would throw to Trish and Paul, and you guys can fight over who would say this, is I do think we should talk about who Schmitz is, and then we should also talk about why this book.
Well, I'll start since Paul got to do the recap. James H. Schmitz actually doesn't have a huge amount of biographical information about himself that I was able to find on my searches. The easily available information is that he was born in 1911 and died in 1981. He was born in Germany of American parents. They left Germany during World War I, went back to Germany, and then fled back to the U.S. again before World War II. And he finally stayed put in in the U.S. after that. His first published story was in 1943, a short story, and his last story, also a short story, was published in 1974. Other than the Tales of the Amber Dawn stories, he is probably best known for his novel The Witches of Karres, or Kars, Karres, which was 2 years before this book, which was nominated for a Hugo Award. I find the plot of that almost incoherent. It's a space opera with a male protagonist and female psionics witches. A lot of Schmitz's story do feature psionics. That was really big in the 60s or so. He was also, an earlier book was Agent of Vega, space opera, spy stuff, also with telepathy. He had another normal human protagonist named Trigger Argy, who was in some short stories in a book that was titled A Tale of Two Clocks, originally, later Legacy. A lot of his books were out of print, and stories were out of print for a long time, and then Baen repackaged some of them in a series of 5 books in the 2000s, I believe it was. But you can also just find the originals by looking online and, used bookstores and stuff like that. I really enjoy Schmitz for his time. He was very progressive with regard to female protagonists who were usually very competent and strong and smart, and fun to read about. His some of his stories are also fairly thoughtful about guarding yourself or guarding your environment against corporate exploitation. I think a lot of his books and stories have some interesting stuff, but this is probably my favorite. No, without a doubt it's my favorite, because Dr. Niall Etland, the protagonist for most of the book, is awesome and smart, and the way the ecology comes into effect in this book and how people have dealt with it and do deal with it and use it, but also work with it, is a lot of fun. And there's some other stuff that is, you have to take or leave it with a grain of salt. Stuff about, the Federation of the Hub overgovernment is rather laissez-faire, and purposely so in order to encourage the human species to be tough against its possible opponents. So, some of that stuff is debatable, but just the main storyline is really interesting and smart, I think.
Interesting. Paul, you want to add anything?
Yeah, so I came to Schmitz some years ago because a friend of mine, somewhat older, told me I should read Tales of the Embered, and it's like, okay. So I did that, and I read The Witches of Karis. I'm a little less critical than Trish, but it is kind of reminds me a bit like A.E. Van Vogt, where twists happen like every 800 words or so, like clockwork, and so is the plotting. The plotting of that novel isn't so great, but I can understand why it was popular at the time. So I had a decent background in Schmitz's work before Trish brought this book to my attention. This is one I had not actually read, and I was delighted that this one does deviate from the Schmitz formula, as Trish said, not having psionics as its main focus, where you see that in so many of his other works and stories in the Hub. We have an ordinary talented human getting it done, and I fell in love. I might not be Daniel of this podcast, but long-time listeners to the show will remember I do have a degree, however unused, in biology. So the biology of the ocean planet fascinated me. The islands of trees, the intelligent otters, the way that Niall respects and uses the environment, and how it's brought to life within the novel really drew me into this story. And I had not read Schmitz in a while. It reminded me of why I liked him in the first place when I started reading the Telsey stories.
Well, could we talk about the world building? Since
Yes.
you brought it up, Paul. So there are these floating islands, because the world we're on is not entirely a water world, if I understand, but
It's
is
mostly
very
ocean,
watery.
but you have these giant islands, basically of giant mangrove cypress-like trees that basically form the mass of these islands that wander around the ocean. What they
And they're
remind me
floating on the currents, not
They're
so.
Right,
floating
floating
on the currents. Yeah, and there's a cycle to them, and they have their own unique ecosystem as a consequence, because they obviously move around
with a very
poles.
with a very tiered ecosystem based on where you are within the where you are as far as the level within the actual island. The ecology, and Schmitz does a great job, and the ecology at water level is very different than the cloud than the cloud forest at the top, and it's a very tiered and complex web of relationships between creatures and plants of the various levels of each individual island.
Right. Parts of the story have Nile and her otters swimming through kelp forests under and around the island, and parts of it have her climbing around in the jungle canopy of the island. You progress. You have giant birds, giant flightless birds that usually eat large ocean fish and stuff. And you have lots and lots of different plants, some of which are not nearly as
benign
as they might appear, right? So Niall Etland is someone who grew up hunting for things to take home and use with her parents, and so she's familiar with everything that is there. And then she studied it as a biologist once she grew up, and now works for a pharmacological company that surveys all the species and harvests them in a sustainable way.
Another thing that's rather progressive to some degree, the idea that a pharmaceutical company might be interested in preservation.
Right. Yeah, there are other Schmitz stories where corporations are basically laying waste to whole redwood type forests and things like that. So, he's not unreservedly go corporations. He, recognizes that things are complex.
I mean, I suppose to some degree the future of this story wants to be just like there needs to be a little optimism about the trajectory of our systems of power. Because
I'd say it's very optimistic.
Yeah. I think we might want to start veering towards putting up that spoiler wall if we're going to go further deeper into
it's already up. It's fine. They got their warning earlier. If you don't want to know what's going on in this book, leave now. Get out.
But what I like about this book is that we got a couple layers here. Yes, this at the base is the story of Dr. Niall Eklund versus aliens, but we also have the whole subplot of Tico's K looking for immortality on this planet and looking through the biology of it as a project, and just like his project just gets wrapped up with the whole alien invasion. It's delightful that we got a couple different, and of course then there's the aliens themselves who wind up getting convinced that Niall is some superhuman and the humans have this super cast. What this reminds me of, I'm going to already go into comps. Sean, have you ever seen the Doctor Who episode, The Sontaran Experiment? The old Doctor Who, Fourth Doctor.
No, I've never seen old Doctor Who.
Okay, so for the listeners, Fourth Doctor, Tom Baker, if you think of an old Doctor, that's the one. In the Sontaran Experiment, he winds up on a future devastated Earth. There's not a lot of people around because most people are asleep on a space station, but that's the last episode. And so a Sontaran, the guys with the plug in the back of the neck, shows up, and the Sontaran's looking for what kind of warriors the Earth has. Because he's convinced the Earth must have a warrior caste to defend them. And once the Doctor figures out that's what he's looking for, the Doctor says, I represent the warrior caste of Earth. And the Sontaran just goes with that because he's clueless and doesn't realize he's a Time Lord. So these aliens are kind of convinced that Niall Eklund is the warrior caste of the humans. And all their mistakes run from the fact that they're convinced that she's a superwoman, part of a secret clique protecting and running humanity. It's delightful, just the basic mistake and the consequences of the aliens not understanding it. No, she's competent, she's intelligent, she's adaptive, but she's just an ordinary human in the end, and they just don't get that about humanity.
Right. Well, also, she had the groundwork laid for her by Dr. Tikas K, who was on the island and got captured by the aliens at the beginning of the book. But even before then, they had thought there must be some kind of secret super race controlling humanity, because they had tried to invade the Federation before and been thrown back pretty easily. And since they are convinced that they are a perfect race, and, there must have just been some fluke, and so they say, we just didn't know enough going into this invasion. We didn't realize they had a secret supercaste of immortal humans controlling the rest of humanity. Which, in the Federation of the Hub, there actually are telepaths and people, but it turns out that they're not necessary.
They're not necessary to defend the planet. No. That's the irony. That's the irony, Sean. In the actual universe, there are kind of super people running around Schmitz's hubverse, but they don't have anything to do with stopping the aliens. They're not there at all. It's the Niles, Tikos, and Otter show to thwart the aliens.
Yeah, to be fair, there have been a lot of stories from the Golden and Silver Age on about aliens trying to invade humanity and being surprised at how tough humans are. And one of the frequently given reasons is that, we looked at images, that reached us through light speed from 100 years ago, and they were only just developing radio then. How can they possibly have nuclear bombs and spaceships now? So that's a very common reason for old science fiction stories for humanity to triumph. But let's see. Let me look at my notes. But there are numerous stories of human exceptionalism where, hey, humanity is great. It'll triumph over all its things. I mean, sometimes it's really something simple like H.G. Wells's microbes on Earth and germs that kill the aliens. But there's lots of stories where humanity, unexpectedly to the aliens, beats back invasion.
Right. In this era, Christopher Anvil's stories are about aliens that come and conquer Earth and conquer humanity, and then realize they've bitten off much more than they can chew because the humans adapt to their technologies and turn the tables in pretty fast order. There's also Harry Turtledove's World War series, where aliens send a probe to Earth in the 12th century, see knights, and figure, okay, we can invade in 800 years, they'll just be the same. So they invade during World War II, and are surprised to see tanks running around the Battle of Stalingrad going, what the hell is this? And the humans adapt fast, and the aliens just don't know what to deal with.
What's that adaptability, right? That is, even when humans are still clearly outmatched in alien invasion stories, it's sometimes our ability to adjust on the fly and find some critical little thing we can exploit. I mean, I was thinking as you were talking of a more modern thing, which would be like Independence Day, where they don't defeat the aliens with superior technology. They use their wit to develop a computer virus that just makes them vulnerable and then exploit the vulnerability. Obviously, later Independence Day actually makes the argument that humans have, like, reverse engineered their technology, which is a different thing. But that idea that, like, humans can overcome anything, usually dystopias are reserved for when humans do things to ourselves.
Yeah.
Less so the aliens have invaded, as it were.
Right, yeah, that, I was thinking about that in reference to the title, The Demon Breed. One might think at the beginning of the book that the demon breed refers to the alien invaders, which are
demon-like ish.
Yep.
Described basically like that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I mean,
there's
we
a-
got two we got two subspecies of aliens with the small intelligent ones and the big brutes. So yeah, you think, oh yeah, they're demons, obviously.
Right, early when Dr. Etland is exploring Tikos's lab that they took him from, she sees what she thinks is a sort of doll on a shelf. Quote, "It was as if a small demonic idol had been set up to preside over what had become of Tikos K's laboratory." So you think, oh, the demons must be the aliens. But reading through the whole book, given the utter panic that gets induced in the invaders, I kind of tend to think that the real demon breed is humanity. Let's see, there's a quote from...
Well, it's worth noting that the book sets you up for this, because like I just double checked that I wasn't hallucinating it, but it's like halfway between on page 2 of the book that the text literally refers to them as the demons. So the book is very much pulling a bit of a switcheroo in that respect, is what the argument we're really making.
Right. So I was gonna just read a short quote. The Federation is a biological fortress armed by the nature of its species. The fortress may be easily penetrated. When this occurs, it turns into a complex of unpredictable but always deadly traps. So, that's all very feel-good, and humanity will prevail. And that was in the wind, in the air of a lot of science fiction of the time. And I suppose a lot of science fiction of now, too. It's, that hasn't exactly gone away. But it's certainly an optimistic book.
Yeah.
Yes, it is an optimistic book. I mean, we go out, we colonize large parts of the galaxy. We've got planets. We got all sorts of planets. We have a loose government. People are moving and doing things. And I mean, it's obviously stable enough that Dr. K can just like say, I'm going to go to this far ocean planet on the edge of known space to try to research immortality because that's what I want to do. And that's just a normal thing.
Yeah.
But it's just interesting world building and how this world is set up. I mean, the name of this planet is Nandy Klein. Who's Nandy and Klein? We don't know, but it's like it's just
is it like this universe's version of Bonnie and Clyde?
I don't know. Could be for all we know. Did they steal this planet? I don't know. But names have power. I mean, Nile and Tikos aren't common names now, so Schmitz is obviously having fun with the evolution of proper names and first names and all sorts of things.
There's a lot of weird stuff going on in the way that he builds the world. And
randomly uplifted otters.
Well, they're not so random. Question mark?
The way the book explains the presence of the intelligent otters on the planet is that someone had sent away for like dog level intelligence, trainable domesticated otters. And when the shipment arrived, after he had been training them for a while, they started talking back to him. And, now, decades later, bunches of them have... It's not quite clear whether they escaped or were let go or just didn't come back, but there's now a population of wild otters who still speak Transling, the common tongue. But some stay with humans because humans tend to do interesting stuff, more interesting than just catching fish and stuff. I like the random feel of, people have tried to find out, to trace back, where this came from. But the web of commerce is so vast and complex in the Federation with its thousands of human planets that, it's just, they can't figure it out. They can't figure out how it happened, how the accident happened, but here they are.
Well,
And
Yeah,
that's-
they're making
interestingly,
their
with
way.
the thing with the otters that is interesting is like as they describe what they guess is some sort of genetic mishap, right? That maybe this wasn't the intended final result. This is what we got. But they describe that they now have a new natural order that they operate under because once they become essentially adults is when they typically will leave to go to the wild, and there are like, you know, roving groups of them in the ocean that supposedly have been seen that like hang out and still talk,
Right.
which suggests that they're now evolving and developing potentially their
A whole
own
culture,
otter civilization, which is
Right.
exciting.
Yeah, they're developing their own weapons. Even they figure out how to make poison dart blowpipes. And you know, that's pretty cool for.
That's awesome
Well,
and
it could have
terrifying.
just been an exploited species, but
It reminds me of a science fiction role playing game, which is in the process of being reissued in a new edition called Blue Planet. Are you familiar with Blue Planet, Sean?
Nope. Paul,
Okay,
I was born in 1983.
You say that a lot to me. Anyway, Blue Planet was an RPG. Basically, the premise is about 100 years from now, we find a Stargate in our solar system that goes to another solar system. A solar system with a water world planet. So, with no intelligent life, but plenty of other life. So we go through, we colonize it. Earth has a civil war and communications cut off for 100 years. So the survivors on the planet do their best. And then finally, Earth comes back. It's like, hey, we're here. And the natives, which are humans, whales, and dolphins, are the locals that have been there for 100 years are kind of skeptical of these new human corporate people coming through and trying to mess up their planet. So there's all sorts of conflicts between the new arrivals, the people who have been there for 100 years, and there are apparently, I don't want to spoil it, there are aliens. But nobody knows that yet. So when I was thinking of the otters, I thought I could drop these otters on the Blue Planet, it would just work just fine. I might do that if I run Blue Planet as an RPG, because these otters are awesome, and they would fit Blue Planet just perfectly as another intelligent species among everything else that goes on that planet.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm. Blue Planet's a very fun world.
I'll
I
have
mean,
to
when
check it out.
when you have dolphins in basically in kind of like Waldo suits being able to shoot torpedoes at enemy ships, you know, that's kind of awesome. Don't piss off the dolphins, especially when they have torpedoes at their command.
Okay.
well, talking of comps, this book also reminded me a lot of David Brenn's Uplift War series, which some of that involves. Well, I think the first one, called The Uplift War, is mainly water based, and humans have done genetic engineering on dolphins and chimpanzees and some other species to uplift their intelligence, and they've joined a galactic federation, and then things happen with conflicts, but the diverse biologies and ecologies that people deal with in some of those books are have a lot of fun ideas and very complex worlds. Humanity is far more on the back foot in those books than it is here.
Yeah, they're the junior kids on the block. The other aliens of that galaxy don't quite know what to do with humans, because every other species, they can figure out, okay, we were progenited by this species, and that species progenited them all the way around, and humans are like sitting out there like, no, nobody progenited us, and the aliens are going like, bull crap, somebody must have created you. Who created you? Show us your creators.
Yeah.
Yes, look, you even created ones of your own. You created these dolphins and chimpanzees, so who created you? So that's a whole plot through the entire series. Who created humanity? And if they didn't, then what does that mean?
We evolved.
But that doesn't happen, Sean.
Didn't you see? No. You saw 2001: Space Odyssey when the like cosmic baby returns to Earth.
Yes,
it's an endless cycle.
But
it's an infinite regress.
But
we create ourselves.
We were uplifted by the monolith in 2001.
But we put it there because the space baby put it there.
That's a stable time loop. That's what we call a stable time loop.
We create ourselves, Paul. We create ourselves in an endless cycle for all time. That's the only purpose to mankind.
oh dear Lord.
Well, that's debatable.
This went deep.
Speaking of weird things, so the aliens have a really they have a rather curious culture that has hierarchical and
Klingon promotions.
They have promotions that usually result in death. Yeah,
exactly.
And they have factions, but those factions operate on what seems like a kind of groupthink, where they operate under you're part of the voice of X, right? The voice of action or what have you, and depending on the circumstances that occur, one of those voices may gain more power than another, and one may not be able to challenge that voice in the political structure of the great Palak.
I've been saying
Palak. Okay.
Yeah, who knows? The species is Parahuan. I have no idea how it's actually pronounced, but like para and Huan. But then there are the lesser Palaks and the great Palaks, then with the hierarchy you were talking about. But yeah, this is one of the things that I like about this book, is that the aliens are not monolithic. They have factionalism between them, as you said, the voice of caution and the voice of action. And that is a huge wedge that Dr. Etland is able to exploit in her psychological warfare that she conducts against the invaders. And it's fun that, you wonder how long are these the two factions that have done this, been the major factions in the species for all time. Or do they rise and fall? Yeah. Yeah, it gives depth to this species, even though, none of them are particularly sympathetic, none of the characters, the alien characters that we meet, but it gives depth to them nonetheless, even though, we don't have to like them, but we can see there's some interesting stuff going on with their history.
Yeah, I mean, the story leaves a lot of that kind of to be discovered. But by framing these two cultures against each other, you're sort of tasked with trying to unpack what makes them similar but also quite different. Because I feel like, this is a thing that has existed in the U.S., the way it is presented, not the U.S., in human cultures, I should say, the way this is presented is intended to make us look at what makes it very similar to cultures we've seen where there's factionalism and people operate under representative voices, etc., perhaps voluntarily or otherwise. We maybe don't do a lot of the killing our opposition as much these days. Some people might be sad about that. I'm generally opposed to the murdering, but yeah, but still, but the thing that I feel like it does that a lot of science fiction does is it takes that out of the language that we would associate with all these different categories, and then just pulls them back a little bit so that the language they use seems more alien. It isn't really, because you can kind of break it down and go, there's obviously some analogs to the real world, but it kind of still makes us go, but this political structure is a little bit screwed up. If your promotion involves, you got two options, you kill or you be killed, and that's how you get, you either get a promotion and live, or you kill someone or you die. Like, that's it. Like, that is a very regressive system that is almost reductively, like a reductive interpretation of like survival of the fittest. Oh, that's essentially.
But they clearly, as they say in the book, they clearly are in the little D sense where they are Darwinists. They believe in survival of the fittest. They believe they're the most fit species, so they should be able to kick over these uplifted apes and just do what they want because they're the dominant species. And so of course when Niles starts opposing them, and Tico throws the bait down, of course they go for the idea. Oh, there must be some higher faction of humanity because that's just logical. It couldn't be these regular humans defeating us. No way.
No.
It's just they just can't understand. They can't comprehend it. The only way they can understand it in their own mindset is if there's a superior faction of humanity doing all this stuff because that's the way their culture has organized their worldview.
Well, you can obviously see the immediate analogs in cultures that have existed, not necessarily in the panelists' lifetime, but not terribly far outside of our lifetimes, where people are exposed to. I mean, these are human cultures, right? But they're exposed to human cultures that can do things that they claim can't be done. I'm thinking here, maybe not as a direct analog, but the kind of very famous discussion of Hitler, which is the moment when black athletes go to the Olympics on the side of the Americans and just stomp all over, and it kind of defeats that racial superiority argument. Kind of throws it out with the water. Like you can't really make this argument if you've been so roundly defeated in this obviously very narrow and specific context, but still. And these aliens are running into that on a species level now, which is humans, we should be able to defeat them. We're better than them in every way, but yet they keep being able to get out of these things. I mean, even the beginning of this book, and then as we go through, Tycho is essentially manipulating them, trying to get away with things. He kind of gets caught at points, but he's still holding back information from these beings that otherwise should figure it out, except that they don't. Really, they kind of figure out parts of it, but they never really get the full picture. And it turns out that humans are good at lying. So it's one of our best traits, apparently. We can lie through our teeth. I don't know if that's a virtue. I just want to be clear. I'm not sure that's the skill set we wanted.
It's a species trait we have, whether it's good or bad.
Yeah, that's very interesting.
Yeah. But that weird alien politics and humans exploiting them makes me think of Don't Ground, and makes me think of a Jerry Pournelle and Larry Niven novel. That'd be Footfall, where the Phthip show up, and at some points humans get captured and put on their ship, and the humans start manipulating the factions on the spaceship immediately. Like, we're not going to show how good we are at stuff. We're going to do stuff ones for ones and not for others, and basically gather information. So, yeah, showing the aliens are not a monolithic block, that they can be exploited, and that humans are clever liars. Again, and yeah, the Phthip have better technology and are bigger and stronger, but humans are cleverer and more deceptive. I mean, there was the scene where the guy has the sphere and is like flips it and throws it in a way that the alien didn't expect and kills it. It's because the human adaptability in full force, and the aliens just don't know what to do with that. We should be curb stomped. I mean, they throw an asteroid into the ocean, and yet the humans just keep on coming. It's very much in the Schmitz vein.
I wonder where this comes from. Like, so much of science fiction has this idea that, like, I mean, you said it very point blank, Paul, like, humans are clever, and that gets us out of things. And we've mentioned this now multiple times. And I don't deny that humans are clever.
I think it's a species thing, because we've survived a heck of a lot that this planet has thrown at us. I mean,
but that's that's very different if it's like nature. That is this like disembodied, non-sentient thing that just stuff happens and we manage to survive. It's very different when you're dealing with an intelligent agent.
But there's also, there's also stories from human history of nations resisting greater powers and punching way above their weight. I mean,
right. Well, American history. what are these people doing? They're not lining up in lines against our lines of soldiers. They're shooting from, cover and stuff. That's not fair.
They're having the kids throw rocks at us. What the hell was that all about? That the Charlotte Hornets got named because the British generals say, well, I'm being attacked by hornets because the populace is just stoning us. It's like, what the hell?
So in chat, Rainbow Warrior is mentioning that Campbell demanded human exceptionalism. So perhaps there's an aspect of
that might
Campbell
be
here.
help baking into science fiction. I mean Heinlein certainly was all big about specializations for insects, and humans are the one best species. I mean, Lazarus Long and his brood defeat gods and things on their adventures. So
yeah, it just seems so curious to me because I kind of lost. I had a thing I was gonna say, and now it left my brain. But I was trying to get at this idea that, so many of our stories are about humans being rather exceptional at being clever,
but yet being the underdog. The underdog,
and yet being often,
the underdog
and super clever. Although a Configuration Queen mentions in chat that one of their favorite bits from Jurassic Park is when the hunter guy says "clever girl," admiring the raptors' sneakiness.
The velociraptors, yes.
And that is a great moment in that movie because it's the hunter realizing he's been out-hunted by a hunter.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a perfect reversal of this trope. Like, no, for once the hunter is out-clevered by the velociraptor. Oops.
And oddly enough, while it is an agent that is involved in saving the humans at the end, the agent is not doing it because it wants to save them. The agent just is the T-Rex, shows up to stop the velociraptors. It's almost like when Godzilla appears as like a force of nature. Yeah.
Yeah, force of nature. So, it's like a kaiju. You can't fight it. It's just
there.
It's just there. Yeah. It's an area effect.
Yeah, and like in this book, right? This book is so much about this conflict between two completely different species that have drastically different cultures and expectations within those cultures. And the conflict that produces is one of, it's really about superiority, which, you would associate with invasion and war, but it is to some degree more than physical. It's mental superiority. It is kind of a battle about who is the most clever, right? The one capable of mentally adapting to whatever the other throws at it. And naturally, that's a very messy thing, right? When we think of like alien invasions, the aliens usually win by might in the beginning, and then they're usually taken over because they're too overconfident, right? They always miss something, right? Whereas in this book, it's not necessarily that they always miss things, they do, but it is that in large respects their culture has worked for so long in this capacity that once they've met somebody who isn't easily mowed over by that method of managing a culture, right? They have no adaptation to it. What are they supposed to adapt to? They've not had to do this before. Whereas perhaps the argument is that humans, even though no agents necessarily throughout our history in all circumstances, we've had to constantly figure out how to make it through tough things over and over, and that's our default mode.
Yeah, actually, I'm suddenly thinking of a book called The Infinity Concerto. I can't think of the name of the author.
Greg Bear?
Maybe.
Is it?
Is that it?
No, I think you're thinking Richard Wagner.
No.
Yeah, very, very different tone.
Anyway, this is a fantasy book where humans and elves are coming into conflict after being separated for a long time, and the protagonist, who starts out as a teenage boy, eventually realizes that that humans have a huge advantage in that they are flexible and elves are not. Partly because elves are very long-lived and humans are mayflies, and so not not being as long lived as the elves, they aren't as bound by culture and tradition, and can innovate better. I'll mute myself and look up who that is, but
it is Greg Bear. It is Greg Bear.
It is Greg
It
Bear.
is Greg Bear.
Yeah,
Okay,
Configuration
all right.
Queen has got it for us in chat.
Right, thank you. So this is not just science fiction, but also fantasy.
Fantasy too. Yeah.
hey, humans are great. That's just optimism. There's no reason at all to think that whatever cultures, whatever other species we might run up against might not be infinitely more capable, whether they were, childhood and just, super technologically advanced, or just actually, genetically superior in whatever ways. We don't know.
I'm thinking of Gordon Dixon's Way of the Pilgrim series. Actually, the stories they've turned into a novel where aliens have conquered the Earth, and our main character basically is kind of a agent for one of them, and basically he tries to organize. I'm going to spoil this book. Sorry, we're in spoilerland anyway. He tries to organize humanity against the aliens secretly, and this turns out to be a terrible idea because the aliens are just outclass us. He basically, in the end, makes Earth and humans distasteful and not worth it for the aliens to keep conquering us. So they decide to leave. Not because we beat them in the field or anything. It's just like you're basically, the aliens say no. The aliens explain, oh, we got displaced of our own world, and now we've gone to other worlds and colonized yours, but we're going to go back at our enemy. And the main character says, great, we could, us humans can help you with that. We can go fight this enemy of yours now that you're not going to conquer us. And the aliens just say, no, you're not worthy. Goodbye, and leave. It's like, so they never actually are beaten. The aliens just like are sick of our bullshit and just decide to leave Earth for other places.
Yeah, speaking of that offer, though, there are quite a few series in the last couple of decades where humans have been tapped to be the grunt warriors in other species.
There's a lot of Bane books with this theory, with this theme. Yeah, they're like, yeah, we're the warriors for the galaxy.
Right.
Or look at the role of humans in Tobias Beckel's Xenowealth saga.
There you go.
Because at the very beginning of that book, some of the humans have basically been enslaved and turned into pets for aliens.
Mm-hmm. Right,
So,
or Jim Hines' what are they called? The janitor?
Space janitor? Yeah, that's Configuration
the
Queen
space
beat you to
janitor
it.
stories, yeah.
Thank you,
the humans, well, I don't want to spoil the series. The first book has a revelation that is relevant to this discussion, but I don't want to spoil it for people because it's a really fun book. But anyway,
it would be interesting, though, if you took all this and you looked at these general plots and which ones view humans very optimistically as always being able to handle the thing, and if that has changed in the present, because I would argue we're in a little bit more of a pessimistic time at the moment, I would say. And I wonder if that bleeds into the fiction. That is like a massive study, though. Someone needs to start cataloging
that's a doctoral candidate's
yeah,
science
I
fiction
remember
thesis.
a panel at a Worldcon some years ago. Maybe it was in Texas, Lone Star Con. Anyway, someone on a panel was complaining about how much more pessimistic science fiction had gotten, and a different panelist said, well, I think I may have part of a handle on that, and he asked the audience, how many of you own or expect to own a home in your lifetime? And only about a quarter of the people's hands went up. And that's just an absolutely huge change from 50 years ago or whatever. It's there's a lot of economic a lot less economic optimism these days among
It's hard to. Yeah, I get it.
It's hard to be an optimist these days.
Yeah. Well, okay, so I want to take a second at the book just a little bit, because I think we only briefly really talked about it, and and I want to make sure that we talk about it before we have to end this. I know that we said at the very beginning, we were like, oh, this book, like, Wikipedia says it's like one of the earliest feminist science fiction books, and we all rolled our eyes and said,
no.
But in that same conversation about the sort of background around the book, we talked about the fact that one of the main characters is a woman who is
the main character is a woman.
Yeah, is enormously competent. It really stuck out to me. You know, we're only really kind of told she's competent when we get that like background scene of her with Tycho, right? Where like she went to school, she knows what she's doing, she's clearly in a position of some degree of authority, like those kinds of things.
Yeah,
but it's mostly
she
kind
sets
of
him on the island, all this stuff.
Yeah, but it's mostly kind of just like kind of told to us the kinds of actions she's doing. It doesn't give us the full breadth. It's when she first goes to the island and the quote unquote Paraguayans essentially try to like turn off her ship and make it so she has to fly down. You see just how good she is at everything she does. She's pulling all these flaps and she's using them to make sure that she's deceptive in the way that she goes down because she knows she's been attacked. And there's this sense to which she is very much in control at all times about anything that she's involved in. She knows exactly what to do. And while obviously other books in this period do have competent women, it really stuck out to me just how much energy this book puts into making her make her actually competent. She knows what she's doing compared to other works where she might be relegated to like, a sexy side lady or maybe she's competent, but just because she has doctor in front of her name, not because she's actually doing anything. We've seen movies for torture cinema that do. It says doctor in front, so that right, she's a strong woman. It's like, but she's being hounded over by like 5 guys in this house, like so.
Yeah.
So I'm curious about you guys, what you took from kind of the trajectory for Nile, which is such an interesting character.
Well, it's ridiculous to say that she's the first feminist character in science fiction. I'm boggled that anyone could come up with that. But it is true that in this era, female protagonists, especially female protagonists without love interests, were very rare in the genre. As far as this book is concerned, she doesn't have a romantic partner. She's not looking for a romantic partner. She is totally focused on her career and then on the invasion. Although it does turn out later that there's a guy she works with, it's not clear whether he's her superior or a colleague or what. And anyway, there's no shadow of romantic whatever between them. She's just a woman doing her job and doing it very well, and it's very gratifying to read that and not have a woman who is an adjunct of some guy in the plot. She works with some guys. She works with Tico's K, but she is very absolutely her own person. And yeah, I cannot think of hardly any books. In 1968, you were starting to have some stuff. Certainly, Ursula Le Guin had some female and non-binary characters, but this is really a standout book for that era for a female character.
Yeah, when I consumed this book, I was half expecting Nile to fall for Tico's K or vice versa, but nope, they just have a professional relationship, and Nile's not interested in that. Nile just wants to kick the aliens off the planet. Thank you very much. No time for kissy face, Dr. Jones, to quote the movie. It's like
kissy face. That's adorable.
But no, so go ahead.
It dawned on me that she does have the otters, and your inclination might be to think that they're like surrogate children. Except even in her narration, right? Schmitz basically says she doesn't know why they're still there because they're adults. They normally would leave, so maybe they just view her as a curiosity.
No,
Maybe.
they enjoy working with her because they're curious, they're interested, they warn her about the aliens, they're eager to participate in dealing with the aliens. They're vicious little buggers too. They are not to be messed
aggressive.
with. I mean, you mentioned the poison arrows and stuff. Yeah, they're willing to get their hands dirty to fight off the alien menace, and they work very well with Nile. In that regard,
And I think that's the key. Is it isn't a true familial relationship. It is to some degree a working relationship.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So she's a standout character in that regard. I mean, this is 1968, and she's not the first feminist character, but she's certainly on an early. This book is an early wave of strong female characters that don't need a man, don't go falling for a man at the first chance they get, and they can handle themselves and handle the plot. And I mean, Tico's is basically the appendage to her, not the other way around.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, he's gone for most of the book. I mean, it's the Niles and Otters show to fight the Parahumans, and Tikos is off screen for most of the book, even though he's there at the beginning.
She earns, not necessarily all throughout the book she earns, but she has earned this skill set, right? This can be like the book is an immediate answer to like the Mary Sue statement, because someone might say, "Oh, well, she's just so confident, so she must be a Mary Sue," and it's like, no, like she went to college, like she studied her ass off to get to where she is.
And she lived on this hard planet, yeah. So she has practical and intellectual skills, and she blends those, and it's like she's not just the intellectual pie in the sky. She knows how to apply her knowledge and go planting bombs to blow up alien ships. It's like, what's not to love?
I mean, that's true love right there. We all would want a woman who could plant bombs and to stop
on alien ships. Yes, it is absolutely true.
Yep, that is every heterosexual man's dream, and also probably every gay woman's dream, I would imagine too.
Yeah, there is no queerness in this book, readers. It's 1968. It's not mentioned. It's not just mentioned at all. Period.
Yeah, it's just absent. Which
it's just absent, which I guess is better than some of the books of the period which have negative depictions of queerness.
I'll take that over more like treating it like a mental illness or something.
Right.
That's around this era. Yeah.
Yeah. Here it's just it just doesn't come up at all. I would like to think that it's not a thing. It is a thing, not a problem in Schmitz's verse, because this is a very, as Trish said, a very laissez-faire universe. The government doesn't really get involved. Getting involved with the government to do anything in this universe is hard. So I would like to think that queerness is okay, but we just don't have any evidence of it existing.
Well, sorry, without some sort of sense of the actual author's politics and an interview with them about potentially this world, the best we can say is it is just like it's an absence. Of course, you can read that rather negatively to say that homosexuality doesn't exist anymore, because what is the likely outcome of something not be supporting in a culture? But I don't know that that's entirely fair either. It could just be the author's that's just a black hole in their mind. That's not a thing they're thinking about. Or you can do world building and you can't get all the pieces. So perhaps this is a book where they were, Schmitz was interested in A, B, and C, and really not a lot outside of that, which I think is probably more of an accurate, I don't think it's intending to erase things to be, there doesn't seem to be a deliberateness to it. It seems like that Schmitz is interested in some very specific world building and cultural elements and plot points, and that's what's really on display. But
yeah, I can't think of any instances of Schmidt's stories where he is offensive to BIPOC or LGBTQ plus. He just doesn't address it as far as I can remember.
Which wouldn't be that uncommon for the era.
No.
Yeah.
But, at least, you're not going to get an unexpected punch in the face if you read one of these books.
Yeah, that would
Not
be...
that I can think of.
Yeah, I can't... well, I'm not familiar with all this work, so I will take your word for it.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing that certainly in this series, right, we would probably be deliberately trying to avoid the punches in the face, which we can... those examples.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. We may feel we need to discuss some books that have very problematic stuff in them, but I certainly don't want to go looking for
Right.
stuff that
It's a little different.
Stereotypes and things.
Yeah, it's a little different to sort of like, we're picking this book and we know it's just full of controversial thing after controversial thing versus we read a
I
book
want this to
and
be
it
a
has an
fun
element.
series.
Yeah, this is
Yeah.
We're mining for gold,
series.
not for muck.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we're mining for latinum here, not for
Latinum. There you go. No.
Yeah.
Keep the Ferengi away. You keep them away. Can't take it. Are you the Grand Nagus, Paul? Is that who you are?
I don't have the ears for it or the lobes. Sorry. Besides, the Grand Nagus knows the difference between Tibet and Nepal.
Oh man, that guy's never gonna live this down, Paul. One day you're gonna be at a
No, he
convention
is
that
not.
he's at, and
Nor
you'll be
should
wearing
he.
the shirt. Yeah. Okay. Do we have any last thoughts before we close out? Any last quick things you'd want to bring up?
Yeah, we had promised that we were gonna announce our next book, but we haven't picked one yet. Sorry,
picked one yet.
that's just you're gonna have to watch the social medias for that one.
Okay.
We'll warn you as soon as
Unless we want to do it right now, but that might take
Well,
a
hold
while.
on.
Oh,
Here's what
God.
I'm going to ask. We obviously are going to do the whole closeout and stuff, so that's plenty of time for folks to do this. Why don't we take suggestions in chat,
Oh, sure.
and we can use those. It'll make it easier for us to pick a book. So how
Yeah.
about chat? Everybody in chat, just toss out one, maybe two lesser known works from pre-1980. That's the year we've taken for these.
Yeah, 1980
Correct.
is our horizon.
Yeah,
Before Sean was born.
we are not going to be studying Hugo and Nebula winners because there are other venues you can find out all about that stuff. What we're looking for is hidden gems, overlooked gems, erased gems, that you feel, that you think we'll enjoy reading and hearing us talk about.
We want fun and the book's interesting to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we want. So we'll
Oh, that's
start
a good
the
one, Configuration Queen. Welcome,
What's
Kate.
that?
we will
I'm
start
not
the
sure when it was.
process of Nova doesn't count Space Age. No.
Delaney is not overlooked. Sorry, it's a good idea.
I love
but not
Delaney.
quite-
Don't get me wrong. And if I could sneak a Delaney in, I would. But I feel like if we did Nova, that's already a gem. That is a diamond.
That's kind of known.
Yeah, it's a great book. Though. I really like
did
it.
any of you know about the Demon Breed before coming to this podcast? Probably not. Nova, I think you probably do.
Yeah. So I guess to think about like picking books that you love, but like nobody else ever talks about. That is from
like I play,
pre-1980.
like I pick in my columns, like those kind of books is like.
Yeah, CQ
Great
asks
stuff out
if
there.
the author has to be overlooked or just the book. I kind of feel like the author. I don't really feel a strong need to discuss Heinlein or Asimov on this podcast. Those are all going to be well enough known. If it's an obscure book by a mid-level author, then certainly we'd think about that.
Yeah. Yeah, so I guess what we're getting away from is we don't really want award winners, books that everybody like Slaughterhouse-Five. No, that's too big. Getting away from stuff that's maybe not like books by really big names, because I think that would be a bit like Niven is being mentioned in chat by Space Age Mermaid. Niven's written some books that certainly nobody talks about anymore because he's written so many damn books, but it's also Larry Niven. So if we say Larry Niven, like everybody knows who that is. So maybe moving a little bit away from the big names to something, maybe someone who's lesser known, but has a not a very popular book. I don't know. There's a lot of options there.
Yeah, there's a lot of works out there.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Creative.
So this is a note to folks at home.
Suggest anything you want, but we're probably
Yeah.
not going to look at the authors who don't need our help.
Yep. But
Yeah,
don't
that's a fair
self-reject. Make
Yeah.
suggestions, don't self-reject.
So for folks at home, keep in mind, you can also make suggestions. We're just obviously doing these recordings live, so the chat and our live show is putting a whole bunch of stuff in there. So anyway, okay,
Skiffy,
so if
Skiffy and Fanny,
everybody
that's
keep
list
doing that
suggestions.
while we do the slow transition out of this show.
Stanislav Lem, I would say science fiction experts, genre historians certainly know Stanislav Lem, but a lot of people don't. So I think we could consider Stanislav Lem.
Here's a whatchamacallit. Here's a spoiler for listeners. I do have a minor Stanislav Lem column coming to the blog soon on a minor Stanislav Lem novel you probably haven't read. No, it's not Solaris. It's something else.
Okay.
Stay tuned.
Okay. So anyway, in chat, throw up some other names in it of what you think, and then we're gonna start our closing out of this show monstrosity.
Right.
And so
If you're listening to the podcast later, we'll talk soon about ways you can reach us.
that's perfect. Okay. So, we just proceed right to closeout, yeah?
Yeah.
I think so.
I think we nailed it. Okay. So for folks at home, if you'd like to let us know your thoughts about this novel or any other episode, etc., there's a bunch of places you can go for this. The best place to go is skiffingfanny.com/listener suggestions, or you can email us, which is just skiffingfanny@gmail.com. The Skiffing Fanny Show is on Blue Sky, Threads, Instagram, TikTok, and a whole bunch of other places. We have what's called a link tree, linktr.ee/skiffyandfanty. That'll take you to all of our socials and other things. Our Patreon is also there, and patreon.com/skiffingfanty is that. If you'd like to give us $1, that'd be lovely. And please, if you're at home and you like this show, go to Apple Podcasts or wherever you do your podcasts, and please leave us a review so folks know that we're there. Paul is miming about a coin he's holding.
Yeah, I got a coin. It's like, give us money.
Oh, got it. I was very confused why you were holding up a coin of your own
Because
face.
you were talking about the Patreon, so I'm holding up my coin. Like, give us
I know,
the
but we
coin,
don't
give us the money.
we don't accept ancient Roman currency. Paul.
I accept it because I'm an
I'd
ancient
accept
Roman.
it.
Anyway, for me, I'm at SeanDuke.net. Obviously, I'm here at Alphabet Streams, where Skiffy and Fanny also is. My streams are Tuesdays, Wednesdays, Thursdays at 7 p.m. Central. I have a Patreon, which is /Joy Factory, and I'm also on Blue Sky, Threads, and all the places. And that is, again, a link tree /Sean Duke, and that's where you can find me.
You are eligible to find me across the internet as Prince Justin. I do book reviews, I do podcasting, I do streaming with Sean, I share photos. I have a Patreon, patreon.com/Prince Justin. You throw a rock, you can find me, and apparently these days I'm talking to The Guardian and NBC News and things. So, you can find me.
And you can find me, Trishy M, on Blue Sky at P.E. Matson, on Mastodon, newsy.social/@TrishEM, on my blog at whatsthewordsnow.blogspot.com, where I recently published a very topical genre poem, fandom related poem, yes. And I also write reviews for Skiffy and Fanty on the blog.
That's perfect. Oh my lord, it's a wild world. So, great, folks.
Wild life, Sean. The Talking Head song has been going through my brain today.
It just continues to be wild. So, since it is required in the Skiffy and Fanny bylaws that even for the genre,
mining the genre
asteroid stuff, yeah, I got to make it awkward. So, to make it awkward, I will just note that I will be uplifting snakes. That is
I'm not
happening.
surprised.
That's exciting.
Wait, isn't that the UNT from Dungeons and Dragons? Aren't they uplifted snakes?
Maybe, but mine will be different, Paul, because I'm going to uplift them and then train them to be social creatures, and then I'm going to take over the planet as the Snake King.
Wow.
This world will
Have
be
goals,
mine.
Sean. Stay frosty, Sean. Stay frosty.
Take care of yourselves and each other if you can.
And on that note, awkward end and scene.
Good night, listeners.
Good night.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
If you want to support this show, you can go to patreon.com/skiffyandfanty or skiffyandfanty.com, our website, where you can get access to all of our fancy things. Our music comes from Holy Mole. You can support him and his work at patreon.com/holymole. Thank you for listening.